this lecture we are going to study the fourth example of intestinal nematodes, which is Strongyloides stercoralis. Essential host parasitic worms infect humans, and free worms live in the soil. Parasitism inside the small intestine buries itself into the mucosa. Strongyloides stercoralis is a 2 millimeter long intestinal worm causing a disease called strongyloidiasis. It is common in tropical and subtropical areas, but also occurs in temperate zones. Like most parasitic worms, Strongyloides stercoralis has a heterogenic life cycle. In addition to the parasitic life cycle, it has a separate free-living cycle where it lives and reproduces without a host in the soil. Strongyloides stercoralis can auto-infect the same host over and over without any intermediate host. This makes strongyloidiasis a very persistent disease. Parasitic life cycle or direct life cycle. A microscopic filiform larva tree penetrates bare skin and touches Strongyloides stercoralis infested soil. It enters the bloodstream, ending at the pulmonary capillaries. There it exits the blood and enters the lung alveoli. It is taken out of the lungs by movement of microvilli through the bronchus and trachea to the throat, where it is swallowed. Eventually it reaches the small intestine, where it develops into an adult female by molting twice. The female lives burrowed into the intestinal wall. It reproduces asexually by parthenogenesis and releases eggs from which first stage larvae called rhabditiform hatch. They either exit the body in the stool or mold twice into infective filariform larvae. Filariform larva either penetrates the intestinal wall, internal autoinfection, or if already in the anus, penetrates the outside perianal skin, external autoinfection. Then it goes through the same routine: blood, lungs, stomach, and back to the small intestine, where it matures into adult. Free living cycle, indirect life cycle. In the soil, rhabditiform larvae either develop into filariform larvae or into adults. If a larva molts only twice, it becomes filariform larva, which is the infective stage and can invade humans. If the rhabditiform larva molts 4 times, it becomes an adult which can survive and reproduce in the soil. The free-living male and female mate and produce eggs. The offspring can either become infective filariform by molting twice or develop into adults by molting 4 times. The adult worms only live through one copulation cycle in the soil. Inside the humans, only females there. Adults can survive longer. This is the life cycle of Strongyloides stercoralis. Autoinfection. The filariform larvae enter the circulatory system, are transported to the lungs, and penetrates the alveoli space. They carry to the trachea and pharynx, swallowed, and reach the small intestine, where they become adults. Adult female worm in the intestine. The eggs deposit in the intestinal mucosa, hatch and migrate to the lumen. Rhabditiform change into falciform and they attack the intestinal mucosa. This is the autoinfection. Outside, as you see here, the eggs are produced or by fertilized female, then rhabditiform hatch and develop into infective falciform. When infective falciform larvae penetrate the intact skin, initiating the infection. Or rhabditiform direct, if they molt 4 times, they transform into males and females. Symptoms. Minor infections can be asymptomatic, but usually one or more of the following symptoms occur. Anemia, for example, pale skin. Constipation. Cough. Diarrhea. Eosinophilic pneumonia during larval migration through the lungs. Nausea. Rashes in waist and buttocks. Stomach ache. Vomiting, weight loss. All these symptoms of the infection of Strongyloides stercoralis. Diagnosis: the presence of larvae in the stool and sometimes in sputum or urine. These larvae of Strongyloides. Treatment by the drug vermicularis, vermicularis. In a single dose, 200 micrograms per kilometer orally for 1 to 2 days. The fifth, parasites of intestinal nematodes, Oxyrus or Enterobius vermicularis or pinworm. Pinworm spreads throughout the world in developing countries with tropical climates and in temperate industrialized countries. They are the most common worms in the world, mainly affecting children and females more than 3 times than males. The disease is often spread among family members and school children. Site of infection. Adult worms live in the cecum, may exist in the appendix, ascending colon, and ileum, and are related to the mucous membrane by the mouth and cause small ulcer there. Morphology. Adult female of Enterobius vermicularis have a long pointed tail and arrow leading to the common name of pinworms, الدبوسية. They are about 8 to 13 millimeters in length. The adult male is about 2 to 5 millimeters in length and has a curved, relatively blunt posterior end as the arrow. Also note the esophageal bulb characteristic of the species. Egg. The egg of Enterobius vermicularis is approximately 25 to 60 micrometer in size. It has a thin shell and one of the sides is flattened. Methods of transmission. The infection is mainly transmitted through the digestion of eggs containing infectious larvae, and the source of contamination may be contact fingers with door closures, sleeping clothes, contaminated bedding, toilets, laundry, dust, air for lightness of eggs, food, or contaminated water. Life cycle. The life cycle begins with eggs being ingested. The eggs hatch in the duodenum, first part of the small intestine. The emerging pinworm larvae grow rapidly in size and migrate through the small intestine toward the colon. During this migration, they molt twice and become adults. Females survive for 5 to 13 weeks and males about 7 weeks. The male and female pinworms mate in the ileum, last part of the small intestine, where after the male pinworms usually die and are passed out with the stool. The gravid female pinworms settle in the ileum, cecum, beginning of the large intestine, appendix, and ascending colon. They are where they attach themselves to the mucosa and ingest colonic contents. Almost the entire body of a gravid female becomes filled with the eggs. The estimations of number of eggs in a gravid female pinworm range from about 11,000 to 16,000 eggs. The egg-laying process begins approximately 5 weeks after initial ingestion of pinworm eggs by the human host. The gravid female pinworms migrate through the colon towards the rectum. They emerge from the anus, and while moving on the skin near the anus, the female pinworms deposit eggs. After depositing the eggs, the female dies. The reason the female emerges from the anus is to obtain the oxygen necessary for the maturation of the eggs. Symptoms. The main symptom is anal pruritus, itching around the anus. The itching occurs mainly during the night and is caused by the female pinworms migrating to lay eggs around the anus. General symptoms are insomnia, persistent difficulties to sleep, and restlessness. A considerable proportion of children suffer from loss of appetite, weight loss, irritability, emotional instability, and enuresis, inability to control urination. However, in women they may move into the vulva and into the vagina, so this can cause vulvovaginitis, and inflammation of the vulva and vagina. Prevention: wash your hands before eating, trim nails, the patient should sleep alone, washing the toilets and the laundries with disinfectant solutions, boiling sheets and underwear and ironing, dress children overall well to prevent them from scratching the anus, treatment of infected people and their surroundings. Diagnosis: itching around the anus is a common symptom. Diagnosis of pinworm can be reached from two simple techniques. The first option is to look for the worms in the perianal region 2 to 3 hours after infected person in sleep. The second option is to touch the perianal skin with the transparent tape, which is called Scotch Test, to collect possible pinworms eggs around the anus. First thing is in the morning. If a person is infected, the eggs on the tape will be visible under microscope. The tape method should be conducted on 3 consecutive mornings right after the infected person wakes up and before she or he does any washing. Treatment: all the family members of the infected person should take albendazole or vermicularis. It is always preferable to repeat the treatment 3 weeks later to break the auto-infection cycle.